guys, it's Mrs. Klein.
And it's Mr. Creighton. We are here with your Lesson 19 podcast, the first one in our China unit. It's titled The Political Development of Imperial China. And our guiding question, which method of selecting officials led to the best leaders for China?
All right, and as always, you guys, there are vocabulary terms. This time they are aristocracy, bureaucracy, civil service examination, dynasty, emperor, imperial, meritocracy, and warlord.
All right, guys, so the introduction. You can follow along on page 267. We're going to go to page 273. Welcome to Imperial China. Historians divide Chinese history into periods ruled by dynasties, or ruling families. You will learn about China's political development under several dynasties from 220 to 1644 CE. China was first unified under an emperor in the 3rd century BCE. From the beginning, emperors needed help to rule.
Over time, Chinese emperors tried several methods of finding qualified people to administer their government. One method was to rely on the class of wealthy families. Emperors like Han Wudi, however, preferred to choose officials for their merit or worth. During the Han Dynasty, candidates for government jobs had to prove their knowledge and ability by passing strict tests. As a result, a class of scholar officials evolved. Under later emperors, this system developed into a rule by officials of proven merit.
In the 13th century CE, a nomadic people called the Mongols built a great empire in Asia. Toward the end of the century, the Mongols conquered China. Under Mongol emperors, government officials in China were foreigners. In this lesson, you will explore how changes in the government affected medieval China. You will also learn which of the government methods were successful in improving medieval China.
Guys, section one is all about the government of Imperial China. In 221 BCE, Prince Zheng, the head of the Qin, became the first Chinese ruler to claim the title of emperor, adopting the name Qin Shi Huangdi, which means first emperor of Qin. From that time on, China usually had an imperial form of government, headed by an emperor or sometimes an empress.
All right, looking at Chinese imperial dynasties. Chinese emperors named a relative, often a son, to become emperor after their deaths. In this way, they established a dynasty or a line of rulers from the same family. From ancient times, Chinese rulers based their right to govern on the mandate of heaven, which is the idea that heaven had chosen a particular dynasty to rule. The Chinese believed that heaven supported the dynasty through the emperor's reign, as long as the emperor ruled well. Natural disasters such as floods, famines, plagues, and earthquakes were interpreted as signs that heaven was displeased.
All right, and you guys might remember that from last year in 6th grade, when you were doing your unit on China. You might recall that phrase, mandate of heaven. All right, China's breakup and reunification is next. The Han Dynasty held power in ancient China for more than 400 years and ushered in a golden age of expansion and prosperity. Like earlier emperors, the Han governed China with the help of a large bureaucracy of government officials. As long as the bureaucracy was skilled, honest, and hardworking, China prospered. By 220, however, corrupt or dishonest relatives and servants of the emperor had seized control of the government.
The result was disastrous. High taxes plunged many families into poverty, and workers were forced to labor for long periods of time on public projects. Additionally, bandits attacked farmers in the countryside. All of this turmoil led to warlords to oppose the emperor and fight against one another, causing the government to become weak and unable to protect farmers.
All right, small farmers suffered because they were required to pay taxes and give half of everything they produced to their landlords. Finally, the farmers rebelled because they believed that the Han Dynasty had lost the mandate of heaven. No new dynasty took over from the Han, so China broke apart into separate kingdoms, just as Europe did after the fall of Rome.
In 589, the northern state of Sui conquered the south and reunified China. The Sui dynasty created a new central government and ruled for 29 years. But by 617, heavy taxes led to unrest and a struggle for power.
In 618, a general named Li Huan declared himself emperor and established the Tang dynasty. Tang rulers built on the accomplishments of the Sui dynasty, strengthened the central government, and increased Tang influence over outlying areas.
Under the Tang, a unified China enjoyed a period of wealth and power that lasted nearly 300 years.
Wow, that's a long time.
That is.
All right, moving on to section 2, you guys. Aristocracy, the Tang dynasty. Like earlier emperors, Tang rulers relied on a large bureaucracy. Officials collected taxes, oversaw building and irrigation projects, managed the army, and enforced the laws.
Before the Han Dynasty, emperors chose members of the aristocracy to help them govern. These people were born into noble families of wealthy and powerful landowners.
All right, to improve the bureaucracy, Han emperors created civil service examinations, in which candidates took long tests to qualify for office. The tests had questions on Chinese classics, poetry, and legal administrative issues. Mainly, they were based on the works of Confucius, China's great philosopher and teacher. This began the system under which a class of scholar officials ran the government.
Later, Tang emperors also used civil service exams to fill out government positions. Early in the dynasty, however, emperors chose aristocrats for most high-level jobs. Even the civil service exam favored aristocrats.
As a result, aristocrats held almost all offices in the early part of the Tang dynasty. And after peasant rebellions and battles between generals ended the Tang dynasty in 907, China split apart once again. Beginning in 960, the Sung dynasty rose.
All right. The Sung relied on civil service exams and made them available to far more candidates, creating a meritocracy. A new school of thought known as Neo-Confucianism influenced the exams. This new teaching blended the teachings of Confucius with elements of Buddhism and Taoism, two traditional religions in China.
Under the Sung, people from lower classes gained the ability to become scholar officials since they could attend the new state-supported schools and continue on to the university.
The exams were organized to prevent cheating. Candidates were locked in a small room for several days.
Yikes, man. Only a small proportion of candidates actually passed the difficult exams. Those who passed had to wait a few years before their first appointment. When it came, it was for a job far from their hometown so that they could not give unfair advantage to their family and friends.
Despite the challenges, people were happy to receive such respected positions. As government officials, they also enjoyed certain privileges, such as being excused from taxes and military service.
Yeah, so that's a couple of reasons you want to work for the government.
Yeah, some benefits.
All right, you guys, now we're going to find out a little bit about Mongol rule. In the 13th century, the Mongols conquered almost all of Asia. The Mongol leader Kublai Khan took the title of Emperor of China and called his dynasty the Yuan dynasty. For nearly 100 years, from 1279 to 1368, China was under Mongol rule.
Kublai Khan ended the system of civil service exams because he did not believe that Confucian learning was needed for government jobs, nor did he want to rely on Chinese people to run his government. To fill important positions, he chose other Mongols who he felt he could trust. Some of these people were his relatives.
Unfortunately, there weren't enough Mongols to fill every job, so they were forced to appoint trusted foreigners to government positions, even some Europeans.
Without the examination system, however, there was a shortage of capable administrators. In 1350, the Mongols restored the exam system, although they set limits on who could take the exam, favoring Mongol and other non-Chinese candidates.
As time passed, fighting among Mongol leaders weakened the government of China, and in the 1350s and 60s, rebels rose up against them. In 1368, the Mongol dynasty collapsed, and the Chinese reestablished their own government under the Ming dynasty.
All right, guys, our last section is Section 5, the revival of the civil service system. Under Ming emperors, civil service exams were again used to fill government positions. This system lasted until the 20th century. In many ways, the exam system served China well.
The civil service system allowed poor men who were ambitious and hardworking the opportunity to be government officials. At the same time, it ensured that officials were trained and talented, not merely rich or related to the emperor.
Yet China's civil service system may have also stood in the way of progress. The exams did not test understanding of science, mathematics, or engineering. People with such knowledge were therefore kept out of the government.
All right, you guys, additionally, the bureaucracy became set in its ways, and its inability to adapt contributed to the fall of the Ming in 1644.
All right, guys, our lesson summary. In this lesson, you have learned how China was governed between 220 and 1644 CE. Chinese emperors relied on a bureaucracy to help them govern. At different times, they used various methods of selecting government officials.
All right, about the imperial government. In 221 BCE, a prince of Qin became the first Chinese emperor under the name Qin Shi Huangdi. For more than 1,500 years, China was ruled under an imperial government by a series of dynasties.
Aristocracy, there you go,
Aristocracy.
Second time. Aristocracy, third time. Early emperors chose officials from the aristocracy. The Han tried to improve government by creating a civil service examination system. Candidates for government jobs had to pass tests based mostly on Confucian learning. Under the Sui and Tang dynasties, civil service exams continued, but aristocrats filled most government jobs under the Tang.
All right, so meritocracy. Rulers of the Song dynasty used civil service exams to create a meritocracy of scholar officials. We also learned about government by foreigners. Mongol emperors from outside of China relied on family members, friends, and trusted foreigners to help run the government.
All right, guys, finally, civil service system restored. Under the Ming, the Chinese restored their civil service system. Bureaucrats became set in their ways, and innovation was not encouraged.
All right, you guys, one last reminder. You've got that guiding question. Which method of selecting officials led to the best leaders for China?
All right, and our terms: aristocracy, bureaucracy, civil service examination, dynasty, emperor, imperial, meritocracy, and warlord.
All right, you guys, we're done.
Sending good vibes.